My name is Lena Körfer and I'm working at the Johannes Gutenberg University in Mainz on Cassiodorus' Variae. In my talk, I would like to present to you the Cassiodorus project in Mainz, as well as my considerations about Cassiodorus' conception of variety, which is central for the understanding of the Variae. I was trained in history, Latin literature, and Latin language at the Justus Liebig University in Gießen, before I switched to the Cassiodorus project in Mainz. My main research interest is literature of late antiquity. I did my PhD on Optatian Porphyry, a poet of panegyrical figurative poems from the age of Constantine. But before I turn to Cassiodorus and his letters, let me briefly introduce to you the scope of the Cassiodorus project in Mainz, which is already in its final phase. Our work on Cassiodorus' Variae is part of the larger digital humanities project, Humanist Computer Interaction Under Scrutiny, in short, Humanist. The word humanist itself is a semantical creation which brings together two different fields of research interests. First, the field of digital humanities, and second, the field of human-computer interaction. In combining these two fields of digital work in the humanities, the project aims at an analysis and validation of innovation capacities in using digital tools in the humanities. The Humanist project owns an interdisciplinary structure with 3 project partners from different academic disciplines. Ancient History at the Johannes Gutenberg University Mainz, which I am part of and to which I will turn back in a minute more detailed. Second, a team of the Technical University in Darmstadt with a high expertise in information technology. And finally, Business Informatics and Media Management of the School for Applied Sciences in Mainz, who take care of the methodological supervision. As I already mentioned, the Humanist project focuses on the analysis and validation of innovation capacities in using digital tools in the humanities. One aim of the project is to detect possible chances and risks which support or restrain researchers in the humanities in working with digital tools. Therefore, we created user-based workshops with international scholars in the humanities, mostly historians for ancient and medieval history, as well as classical philologists. These workshops were held in Germany, Austria, Belgium, and Scotland, and presented to the scholars a variety of digital tools and methods for text analysis, for example, markup language, annotation, and network analysis. During these workshops, the letters of Cassiodorus served as an exemplary research topic for experiencing the presented tools. In preparation of these workshops, we added an enormous amount of data to the Latin text of the Variae, lemmatization data, philological and historical commentaries, a database with commentaries on the addressees, the location named as well as functional and social groups included in the letters. We are actually preparing a German translation with historical and philological commentary of Book 3 of Cassiodorus' Variae, print and ebook including introduction and an extensive prosopography. We, that are my colleague Christian Stadermann, a group of student assistants, Marietta Horster as the team leading professor, and myself. What you see on this slide is the text of Variae Book 3, Letter 1 in digital form, a letter from Theodoric the Great to Alaric II. As I already mentioned, we had the idea to add digital annotations of various kinds to the text, for example, prosopographical details or lemmatization data. What happens with the Latin text when you add enormous annotations in Thai XML to it is shown on the next slide. It will get unreadable. In terms of a better usability and to make us work more on the Latin text than on the deciphering of annotations, the team members of the University of Mainz and the Technical University in Darmstadt decided to develop a digital annotation tool which is tailored to the commentary of Cassiodore. QAnnotate provides a specialized surface for different kinds of annotations, like historical and philological comments or links to entries in databases. Its most convincing point can be seen in the ability to work in collaborative teams. All entries in QAnnotate, the databases, the commentaries, and the Latin text itself are saved as a single file, Git-based structure. A versioning control system running parallel establishes the permanent actualization of files for all users. QAnnotate is work in progress. Its functionality depends on the permanent interaction between historians, respectively philologists as users, and computer sciences as developers. In the beginning of the project, we focused on the data input, but are now preparing the data for publication, both as printed monograph and as ebook. My following considerations about variety in Cassiodorus' letters result both from our work with digital tools and methods, such as linguistic analysis, lemmatization, and digital annotation, as well as from my reading experience translating Book 3 of the Variae. The rhetoric of going and being gone, variety as a reading principle in Cassiodorus' letters of Commeatus. The concept of varietas is central to the stylistic compositions and arrangement of letters which comprise Cassiodorus' Variae. In the first preface, the author himself provides a model for the understanding of his multi-layered letter corpus. He states that his texts may address various personas as well as readers from different levels of literate education. The three letters of Commeatus, Variae 321, 448, and 736, present fascinating thematical, semantical, and syntactical interconnections, which are linked to varietas as the leading principle of composition. Compared to the formula Commeatales, Variae 736, the two individual permissions of indutiae serve either as a medium of accommodation, Variae 448, or critique, Variae 321. My talk seeks to examine the multilayered interpretive possibilities offered by complex forms of intertextual references for both the addressee of the letter and the reader of Cassiodorus' corpus as a united variety. Variatio, respectively varietas, is a key concept of aesthetic, linguistic, and stylistic composition in arts and literature of late antiquity. Variatio as a literary composition principle is most prominent in the late antique poetry, which is characterized by a close interaction of aesthetic principles of the visual and literary arts, as the programmatic Jude style by Michael Roberts has shown. In literary texts of late antiquity, stylistic variatio diversifies an enumerating sequence to the extent of both literary ornament, ornatus, and the alteration of identical semantical units in forms of words or sentences. This twofold understanding of variatio in literature roots in the cultural background of the late antique arts and aesthetics, where the variation and alteration of different materials in form and color is named as varietas. The material background of variatio is transformed into literary text through a variety of topoi and performative speech acts, such as poetological motifs of light and dark, flowers in different colors, or ekphrastic speech acts, which stimulate the imagination of the reader, an argeia. Except from Michael Shane Bjornley's article on the rhetoric of varietas and epistolary encyclopedism in the Variae of Cassiodore, and some fundamental considerations about variatio as stylistic principle in Friederike Gatzka's recently published commentary of the formulaic letters of Variae Book 6, the concept of variety hasn't been in the debate about Cassiodorus' arrangement and composition of letters as comprised in the Variae. In their commentaries of the Psalms, both Augustine and Cassiodorus define variety as diversitas and not primary as dignitas. In the sense of diversitas, variety serves to differentiate between maximal semantical and syntactical potentials, which have to be detected and linked together by an educated reader. Beside the programmatic title of Cassiodorus' letter collection as Variae, the two prefaces, the first one before Book 1, the second one before Book 11, display variatio as a key concept of composition for both individual letters and the arrangement of letters in a collection. In the first preface, the author himself provides a model for the understanding of his multi-layered letter corpus. He states that his texts may address various personas, as well as readers from different levels of literacy. For example, rhetorical skill. A similar occurrence of a provided model of understanding can be found in the preface of Book 11. Cassiodorus argues that his letters may attract novice students rather than the skilled reader due to his texts lacking the eloquent brilliance founded in Cicero's style of writing. Close friends are considered as the model reader of the Variae. The first preface consists of a fictional face-to-face conversation between Cassiodorus and his peers, whilst the second preface introduces a certain Felix, whose advice Cassiodorus highly appreciates. In a close reading of the three letters of Commiatus, Variae 321, 448, and the Formula 736, my talk will argue that there are many subtle intertextual references at work which lead to varietas as the leading strategy for the detection of relationships between individual letters and the corpus as a whole. Variatio, and that's the main point when dealing with varietas within Cassiodorus' letters, acts as an instrument of stylistic consolidation. A tight network of intertextual references puts it on the reader to interpret their stylistic variation and the alteration of their motives. Commiatus and indutiae in public administration of late antiquity. But before moving to a close reading of the letters, I would like to say a few words about the meaning and regulations of commiatus in late antique public administration. With a commiatus, a member of a functional degree was allowed to remove himself for a certain period of time from his foremost place of duty, especially senators who were subject to the residency requirement to take part in the Senate meetings at Rome. The idea of commiatus derives from the military sphere. Its synonym, indutiae, implies that commanders were allowed to grant soldiers leave from military duties for a certain period of time. The military origin of the concept of commeatus is still present in the Variae, where the word indutiae serves to grant the requested commeatus. However, in late antiquity, emperors more and more saw the necessity to restrict the granting of commeatus for both soldiers and officials by law. Regarding the military sector, there were hard restrictions for soldiers who requested an indutiae. Constantine the Great decreed that nobody in the rank of a praepositus, decurio, or tribunus should grant soldiers leave. Only officials of high military rank status had the right to take indutiae, like the dux of a province, the comes rei militares, or the magister militum. On the basis of the Justinian Code, it seems that there must have been difficulties in the practical handling of the indutiae granted, which concern the abuse and delayed return of officials from leave. The Eastern Emperor Zeno adopted a law that tribuni who are allowed to request indutiae should return from leave for private purposes within 1 year. If they should not return within this period of time, they should be downgraded by 1 grade for each subsequent year. Regarding the commeatus of officials, the legal regulations were somewhat looser. Since the reign of Honorius and the end of the 4th and beginning of the 5th century, it was allowed for viri clarissimi and viri spectabiles to take their residency outside of Rome without any request of commeatus. If they do so, they should lose their right to speak and vote in the Senate meetings. Men in the rank of viri illustres, for the most part senators residing at Rome, were still obliged to request a commeatus, which was permitted usually. A reason for the restrictions of commeatus granted to senators was the phenomenon that many officials went to their residencies in the provinces during the time of their leave. In late antiquity, aristocratic families more and more perceived their villae as safe places to protect their property and asserts, while the recent attacks by Germanic tribes had shown the vulnerability of the cities only. Therefore, in the sense of traditional and nostalgic Romanitas, rulers like Theodoric endeavored to keep the cities lively. Moreover, in the Variae of Cassiodore, the opposition between city and country seems to reflect the classically known transition of negotium, city, to odium, country, which is also central to the following discussion of Cassiodorus' letters of commeatus. Variae 736. The formulaic rhetoric of commeatus in the Variae. Before turning to the 2 letters which concede a commeatus to a particular senator in the rank of vir illustris, Variae 448 to a certain Eusebius, Variae 321 to a certain Faustus, I would like to introduce to you Variae 736, which is a formulaic letter for the purpose of granting a commeatus to a functionary official. In condensed form, the formula refers to a variety of motives and topoi of the 2 personal letters. In research on Cassiodorus' Variae, there are different views on whether the formula of Book 6 and 7 were written before the personal letters of Book 1 to 5 or afterwards. Some researchers believe that the formulae were thought to be basical letters with less stylistic ornament, which provided Cassiodore and his peers a basis for writing individualized letters to certain officials. On the contrary, some researchers say that the formulae must have been written after the personalized letters, which are stored in archives and used by chancellery officers as a kind of manual to identify common motives and topoi. As Alberto Cecconi was right to point out in his introduction to the Italian commentary and translation of Book 7, the close relations between Formula 736 and the personalized letters Variae 321 and 448 argue for thesis number 2. The close interconnection of condensed motives as well as semantical and syntactical structures in Variae 321, 448, and 736 suggest a broader process of revising the three texts as a sequence and ordering them as a group within the corpus compiled. But now, let's take a look at the key aspects and central motives of Commeatus, seen through the lens of Formula 736. Through the opening sequence of the letter, the Proemium, Cassiodore introduces in some way philosophically the meaning of variatio as one of the main principles of life. Homo commutabilis. It should be part of human nature to aspire a life full of diverse experiences, what lead to man's recreation. Suavi varietate recreari. Both phrases, homo commutabilis and suavi varietate recreari, can be seen as a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy for the reader who will detect the numerous manifestations of variatio that are inscribed in the performatively in Variae 736 during his reading process. Two examples of synesthetical quality may illustrate the importance of variatio as reading principle in letter 736. First, Cassiodore compares a lifestyle without variety with the sweetness of honey that will vanish when tasted too often. Dulcedo melis, si acidue sumatur, horrescit. The intransitive use of horresco implies a change of meaning from becoming wrath, solidify, or tremble to fading away, which already takes into account the reaction of the one tasting the honey. On the one hand, the verb horrescit serves as a performative speech act, which needs to be transformed through the reader's mind. On the other hand, the verb may point to Cassiodore' conception of variatio, which is of high performative quality, and may point to the reader's active role in detecting connections both within a letter and in between them. The second example of variatio as reading principle in Variae 736 refers to a first paradoxical seeming contrast. Even the bright things in life, serena, will get dirty, sordescunt, no matter how much you yearn for them. Serena ipsa, quam vis magnopere desiderentur, jugiter ad etta sordescunt. The oxymoron, light shining things in contrast to dark dirt, with an integrated metaphor, serena stands for the bright things in life, sordescunt for the bad, compares aspects of two central registers. Serenus is situated in the visual sphere, whereas sordesco originates from the haptical sense. Cassiodore combines both the visual and haptical sphere in a polysemantical metaphor, which refers to the mental and emotional state of man, and further to variatio as highly poetical and performative literary principle, to the extent that the before-mentioned homo commutabilis turns more and more into a lector commutabilis of Cassiodorus' letters. The dispositio of Variae 736 draws the attention of the reader on another central topos linked to varietas as a principle of life. The granting of the formulae commeatus is connected to the contrary between life in the city and on the countryside, implicating the contrast between official duties, negotium, and recreation, otium. Ita tamen, ut cum promeritas indutias domino juvante transegeris, ad urbana sedes retire festines. Usually the countryside represents the place of otium, where officials and the senators seek time for leisure and muse. Variae 736 turns the classical motive of rural odium and urban negodium into the opposite, stating that when one perceives life in the city as annoying, how much more boring must it be to live for a long time on the countryside? Nam si taedium est continuatim vivere in urbis celebritate, quando magis in acris diutina tempora per egisse. Cassiodorus' transformation of negotium and otium is another example for variatio as an overriding principle of composition. It varies the reader's semantical registers and forces him to call into question the usual contextualization of motives. After talking about the prominent aspects of commeatus included in the exemplary formula Variae 736, I would like to turn to two personalized letters granting indutiae to senators in the rank of viri illustris, Variae 321 and 448. Both letters are characterized through a high variation of concepts and motives of the formulaic letter 736. But, however, the scope of adaptation of topoi serves different objectives in both letters. Whereas Variae 448 is oriented closely on the structure and semantical order of formula 736, letter 321 shows a high degree of variation and alteration of the central topoi of commeatus. The variation of motives, topoi, as well as semantical and syntactical units, is linked to the addressee of each letter, which should be understood either as a medium of accommodation or critique. Variae 448, the rhetoric of going. Variae 448 addresses Eusebius, a vir illustris since 509 and perhaps already in a higher official duty, who was summoned by Theodoric to conduct the trial of Boetius as a praefectus urbi in 523 or 24. The opening sequence of Variae 448 refers back to the end of Formula 736, it broaching the issue of life in the city and on the countryside. The opening sequence of Variae 448 adopts the central linguistic features of the Formula 736, while at the same time showing a high degree of syntactical variation. In Variae 448, Cassiodorus on the one hand refers to the prominent formulaic motives, both the shift from the urban to the rural life as well as variatio as a higher philosophical principle of life. On the other hand, Variae 448 shows a linguistic crossover of these motives, which are presented in the first paragraph, condensed, and should be seen as part of the text's variatio. In Variae 448, Cassiodore uses approximately the same word material as in the formulaic letter 736, provinciali and recreari without any changes in form and function, suavi with a shift from its use as adjective to noun, suavitate. Only the small changes in syntax and semantics make the text of Variae 448 appear as a miniature formula without any general philosophical reflections and personalized for the addressee Eusebius. Magnitudo tua, tibi desideras. The dispositio of Variae 448 changes in tone and speech gesture. The before-mentioned contrast between a rural and an urban lifestyle is transferred into an addressing which praises Eusebius almost panegyrically as part of a senatorial elite at Rome. The phrase conventui nobilium refers to the Senate as institution. In the closing sequence of Variae 448-2, the two justificational explanations of his commiatus illustrate the very personalized character of the letter. First, Cassiodorus refers to the moral values and his virtuous character, which makes him part of the elitist senatorial community. Digna tuis moribus conversatione. Second, Cassiodorus leaves it to the interpretation of the reader whether his elite peers have longing for him or Eusebius yearns for the senatorial community. The genitive in multorum desiderio can either be read objectively, through the longing of many people, or subjectively, through your longing of many people, for many people, and points once more to the active role of the reader interpreting the variatio of the variae. In sum, letter 448 presents the central motives of Variae 736, condensed and personalized for Eusebius. The epistolographical tone and speech gesture illustrate that Theodoric confirmed the request of Eusebius for commiatus with acknowledgement. And I would like to turn now to my last text, Variae 321, the rhetoric of being gone. The letter Variae 321 is another example of a confirmed request for commiatus, and unlike Variae 448, the text shows how much more alteration and variation in using the central concepts of commiatus, seen in the formulaic letter Variae 736. Letter 321 is addressed to a certain Faustus, who is surely not to be identified with the Praetorian prefect Flavius Anicius Probus Faustus Junior Niger, but with Faustus II of the prosopography of the later Roman Empire, who was a member of the Senate since 507 or 8, and has thus acquired the rank of a vir illustris. Mommsen dates the text to the year 510. In contrast to Eusebius in Variae 448, Faustus seems to request the indutiae for regulating matters in his own interest. Disponendae utilitatis propriae causa. The demanding character of the passage is supported by the verb postulare, which differs strongly from the wish of Eusebius, desiderat. The proemium of Variae 321 appeals to the opening sequence of the formulaic letter 736, introducing variety as a philosophical principle of life. The keywords variata and eximia can be interpreted as corresponding to each other. Variata means everything which creates variety. Eximia may refer to things, events, or occupations in life that are extraordinary and exceptional. In the narrative of letter 321, variety serves from the extraordinary. Variata plus capiant, et quamvis in usum habeantur eximia, which may also be projected onto Faustus's privileges as a Roman senator executing many different orders and different duties, while being extraordinary in his rank as vir illustris. The contrary between rural and urban life, which was a guiding motive of Commiatus in the letters Variae 448 and 736, is not present in the opening paragraph of Variae 321. The text rather points out to the phenomenon of urban outmigration, which Theodoric seeks to limit through restrictions of Commiatus. The phrase multiplici convento contains an ambiguous meaning. On the one hand, the word conventus refers to the residents of Rome to be retrained in large numbers. On the other hand, the term conventus serves to describe the Senate such as I presented on the basis of letter Variae 448, addressed to Eusebius. The ambivalent use of the term conventus is located in the middle of a sequence of metaphorical and nostalgic descriptions of Rome as the house of senators, for the purpose of reminding Faustus of the commitment to official duties. In contrast to Variae 448, where the place of Eusebius' destination, Lucania, is named, Variae 321 omits the precise indication of the province concerned, ad provinciam. Instead, Cassiodore endeavors to present Rome as a place of longing, especially for senators, and therefore dresses the description of the city in nostalgic vocabulary. Sacris moenibus, as a substitute for the buildings in the city center, habitatio tam clara and habitatio romana as synonyms for Rome, as well as terrarum opinatissima, a metaphor for Rome as the most treasured spot on earth. The last passage of the letter shows two different rhetorical strategies to confirm the obligatory nature of Faustus's quick return to Rome. First, Cassiodore projects Faustus' actions as an individual senator onto a general statement about any other Roman senator, keeping apart from Rome and feeling suffering about it. Quando senator Romanus alibi possit dolere tardatus, which stresses the moral appellation of Faustus once more. Second, the call for an early return of Faustus is traced into sacral terminology. His house is personified by references to the penates and lares of his family, ad penates proprios, possunt constitutes laribus habitare, to which he should return quickly, ret ire festines. In the end, Cassiodore compares the request of Faustus leaving Rome for regulating matters in his own interest almost with the committing of a sin, piaculi genus est. The syntactical structure of the sentence points out to the active role of Faustus, who makes Rome absent from him and not the other way around. Absentem sibi Roman diutius facere. The last sentence of Variae 321 recalls the closing passage of the formula Variae 736 and, in the sense of variatio, turns it into its opposite. Rome should not be put in the back, but recommended even more strongly to those who are absent. Conclusion. The three letters of Commiatus form a group of letters within the corpus of the Variae and are linked closely through variatio as guiding principle of composition. The links between the letters are constituted by semantical, syntactical, and rhetorical strategies of variation. Formula 736 presents the central motives of Commiatus, condensed, and serves as an exemplary text implementing and combining elementary topoi. Variae 448, addressed to the Senator Eusebius, presents itself as a letter of Theodoric's acceptance of the requested indutiae and should be interpreted as a medium of sovereign consent and accommodation. The letter to Faustus, Variae 321, however, shows a high degree of variation and alteration of the classical Commiatus motives, like a nostalgic view on Rome as home place of senators or the house of Faustus, personalized by his Lares and Penates. Variatio should therefore be regarded as the overriding principle of composition of the Variae, which not only brings letters together as groups, but also the reader closer to the text. Many thanks for your attention.